Can the world not mobilize, if these are about 1% of the calories, 20 or 30% of the calories in a certain country, could the world not mobilize to find other caloric sources, rice, fish, soybeans, whatever? Or is our system so fragile that we can't rally around sending food to anywhere on the planet, despite the fact that we can fly anywhere and go on vacation for 2 weeks anywhere on the planet?
No, the food system is complex and efficient, but it does not have strong redundancy or malleability. So take, for example, how do you get flour? You get flour in your food from a food company that bought the flour from a miller. There are mills around the world that process wheat into flour. You can't take that same mill and process corn into flour. There's different technology, different equipment that's used. Same with soybeans and so on. So when you look at how the food supply chain is constructed, there's a local point of consumption, which is a store. Then there's a food processor, and you work your way kind of up the supply chain. And there's a certain input that's required to make the output that people consume. And so calories, while they might be fungible, practically speaking, or fundamentally speaking, they're not necessarily fungible, practically speaking, on the ground. When you actually try and plug in, let's say, soybeans into the milling supply chain to make the pasta or the bread that everyone consumes in Tunisia, it's not going to work. And the same is true with rice. And then the more important dynamic force that's underway is that these markets for food and commodities globally are not controlled by government. They're controlled by private businesses. And there's a market for these products. And so what happens is, as the food supply chain threat hit, countries like China and others started to stockpile. They started to buy lots and lots of supply, drive up their stocks and their reserves, for fear of the famine that's about to hit us in about 9 months. And when they did that, there was now less food available to Tunisia and to Eritrea and to Egypt and so on. And so we're starting to see the effects of that dislocation driving dynamic market forces where certain buyers stock up, and then the folks that can't afford to step in not being able to acquire product and being left. So not only do we have a local production differential that makes it hard to have all calories be fungible, we're also seeing this dynamic where there's a bifurcation where the haves have more and the have-nots have less. And that's going to really make this famine kind of hit home in a really, really sad way in the months to come. We're already seeing, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, the fertilizer problem driving acreage down. So the USDA farm report comes out. They survey farmers and figure out how much they're going to plant every year. And they just downgraded the number of corn acres that are going to get planted this year, which is happening starting this month, from 93 million acres to 89 million. That doesn't sound like a lot, but 4 million acres.
Yeah.
4 million acres coming out of production of corn in the US is an incredible amount of calories that are not going to be planted to corn. And so that has all these downstream effects. And again, this crop doesn't come to harvest till, September, October. Then it's going to get processed and it turns into food. So by the time the effect of this decision making hit the marketplace, the availability of calories and the stockpiling that's going on, it's like, boom, some countries are going to be, they're going to have a limited budget. They're only going to be able to access so much food and they can't access any. And other countries are going to be fine. The United States is going to be fine. Western Europe will be fine. China will be fine. Sri Lanka is going to be a mess. Northern and Eastern Africa is going to be a mess. I mean, there's like places around the world that we are going to have to scramble. I don't have a real easy answer. There's no simple plug and play here. It's going to be a really complex set of problems that are going to need to be solved.
Well, Sri Lanka does grow a lot of its own food, so they may be okay because they're
a net importer, right? I mean, they're a pretty big net importer. So they make a lot of food, but they rely on imports a lot for calories there. So yeah, I mean, and that's the case with a lot of places around the world. A lot of people think, oh, we have farmers, but most countries, particularly in the developing world, are net importers. They rely on third-party supplies of food. So
sure, but a lot of what you're talking about though are not they're processed foods that come into the country.